The restaurant was dimly lit, candles flickering on every table, casting a soft glow that should have made the night feel intimate. I had spent the entire afternoon carefully choosing this place, imagining the perfect evening, our anniversary, a quiet table for two, soft jazz in the background, and her smile lighting up the room. Yet, as soon as we were seated, I felt the first twinge of unease. She arrived, looking radiant, her dress hugging her figure in a way that made my chest tighten. She greeted me with a playful smile and a kiss on the cheek, but then, her attention shifted almost immediately. Across the room, my best friend was already seated at the bar, waiting for a drink. And that's when it started, the subtle teasing glances, the brush of her hand as she waved him over, the laughter that felt a little too intimate. At first, I tried to brush it off. It's harmless, I told myself. I had always trusted her, and I had always believed in keeping things light-hearted, even playful. But as the night progressed, the teasing escalated. Words that should have been private flirtations with me were instead directed at him. "You always know how to make me laugh," she said, leaning in closer than necessary. He responded with a grin that I recognized all too well, the same grin we shared after every inside joke, the one I had always considered exclusive between us. I felt my stomach knot. My heart raced, not with jealousy alone, but with disbelief. I opened my mouth to say something, to call her out, to let her know that her actions were crossing a line. But instead, I smiled. A slow, controlled smile, the kind that masks every emotion underneath. "Fine," I said when she caught my eyes. Fine. Her teasing didn't stop, and in that smile, I realized something important. I had lost the first battle of control. The appetizers arrived, but I barely tasted mine. I watched her, watched them, studied their expressions, and catalogued every little gesture that made my chest ache. The way she tilted her head when he complimented her, the way she laughed like it was the most private joke in the world, the subtle brush of her fingers against his hand, it all felt like a deliberate challenge. And yet, as furious as I felt, there was something else simmering underneath the surface. Curiosity, a strange and dangerous pull that whispered, "See what happens if you push back." It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about me, about proving that I could play the same game without losing myself completely. I excused myself under the pretense of getting a drink, my mind racing with possibilities. As I walked toward the bar, I felt a mix of anger, excitement, and fear. What I was about to do felt reckless, yet inevitable. I knew her boundaries, or the lack thereof, would determine the next move. And so, in the shadows of that dimly lit room, I sent a small, flirty message to her best friend. A single line, innocuous yet pointed, mirroring the way she had acted with my best friend. Returning to the table, I felt a shift in the air, subtle but undeniable. Her smile faltered for just a second before she masked it with another playful laugh. I had thrown the first stone, and now the waters were stirred. Our anniversary, which I had imagined as a night of warmth and connection, had transformed into a minefield of unsaid words and unspoken challenges. Every bite of the main course felt heavy, loaded with tension. She continued her banter with him, leaning in, laughing at jokes I couldn't hear, touching his arm casually as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And I sat there, calm on the surface, but my mind a storm of calculations, planning my next move, feeling the adrenaline of a silent confrontation building between us. By the time dessert arrived, the restaurant had grown quiet. The flicker of candlelight cast shadows across our faces, highlighting the small cracks in our composure. I looked at her, and for a fleeting second, I saw the girl I had fallen in love with, the one who made every anniversary magical. But just as quickly, she disappeared behind the mask of flirtation and amusement, leaving only the woman who had chosen a dangerous game over honesty. It was in that moment, the one between bites, the pause before the final sip of wine, that I realized the night had already changed irrevocably. I had smiled, I had masked my hurt, I had even played my own small game, but the rules were different now. The line between love and rivalry, trust and betrayal, had blurred into something I didn't yet understand. And I knew, deep down, that the true test of our relationship was just beginning. I excused myself once more, claiming a need for fresh air, stepping outside into the cool night. The streets were empty, and the distant hum of traffic barely reached my ears. I checked my phone, saw her message acknowledging my little flirtation, and felt a mix of triumph and dread. We were dancing on the edge of something dangerous, and the consequences were about to hit faster than either of us expected. The walk back into the restaurant felt like stepping into an arena. Every step was measured, every breath calculated. I returned to the table, our eyes meeting for the briefest moment, a silent acknowledgement of the war we had started. And in that silent exchange, I understood that nothing that happened after this would ever be the same. Dinner concluded. The check was paid, and we rose to leave. I felt the weight of the evening pressing down on me, the tension in her movements, the unspoken words hanging like clouds over our heads. As we stepped toward the door, I saw the flicker of doubt in her eyes, the hint that she had recognized my retaliation, even if she didn't fully understand it yet. By the time we reached the street, the cool air did little to calm my racing heart. I realized that this anniversary, which had begun with such promise, had transformed into a battlefield of emotions. Anger, attraction, jealousy, and desire twisted together, forming a knot that neither of us could untangle easily. And in that moment, as I looked at her, I knew that the night had already taken a turn from which there would be no simple return. The playful teasing had ignited something much more volatile. What began as a smile and a masked fine had become the opening move in a game whose stakes were higher than either of us had anticipated. The morning after our anniversary felt heavy, like the world had tilted on its axis overnight. I woke with a tightness in my chest, replaying every detail from the previous night, the laughter, the looks, the teasing. I checked my phone almost instinctively. There it was, a reply from her best friend. Just a few words, playful, innocent on the surface, yet enough to make my heart skip a beat. I realized immediately that I had stepped into dangerous territory, the kind that didn't just affect Mitt, rippled outward, touching everyone involved. I spent the morning trying to distract myself, moving through my apartment mechanically. The coffee tasted bitter, my thoughts wandering uncontrollably to her. Did she suspect anything? Was she proud of herself for pushing boundaries? Or had she, like me, felt a thrill in this silent exchange of provocations? I hated the answers, but I couldn't ignore them. By noon, I knew I had to confront the reality of the situation. I reached out to her, casually at first, trying to gauge her mood, her intentions. She answered with the same lightness that had filled the restaurant, joking about last night, pretending that nothing had shifted. But I could sense it for subtle tension in her words, the hesitation that betrayed her amusement and a hint of unease. It was a delicate balance. I had initiated my own game, sending a flirtatious message, and now the consequences were unpredictable. She could retaliate, laugh it off, or worst of all misinterpret my intentions entirely. I realized that the thin line I had been walking was more precarious than I had thought. What had started as a playful jab had become a test of loyalty, desire, and control. The next few days were a blur of messages and subtle signals. I watched her interactions with my best friend closely, noting every smile, every brush of the hand, every joke. I saw how easily she could manipulate attention, how natural she was in drawing people into her orbit. And then I noticed something else, a shift in my own behavior. I found myself watching her, analyzing her every word, every glance, and responding with equal subtlety to her best friend. The thrill of the forbidden, the magnetic pull of blurred boundaries, became addictive. One evening, she invited me over under the guise of a quiet night together. I arrived to find her lounging on the couch, wine in hand, an air of casual intimacy surrounding her. The way she looked at me was different, less open, more calculating, as if measuring how far she could push me. Conversation flowed easily at first, trivial matters, jokes about our friends, shared memories. Yet beneath every word was a tension that neither of us addressed directly. Then, without warning, she leaned closer and whispered, "Remember last night? Wasn't it exciting?" My stomach churned. She had crossed the line from teasing to acknowledgement, and now I was forced to decide how to respond. I could feel the electricity in the room, dangerous and intoxicating. I smiled, the same controlled smile I had worn at dinner, and said nothing. Silence became our weapon, each of us gauging the other, testing limits. Later, as I excused myself to check my phone, I felt a pulse of excitement mixed with fear. There was another reply from her best friend, this time playful but with an undertone of curiosity, a reflection of the chaos I had unleashed. I realized that what I had done was no longer just about her or MIT, was a web, delicate and tangled, involving people who had no idea how high the stakes had become. Over the next week, the tension escalated. Every interaction felt like a chess move. I had to balance my feelings of desire, jealousy, and anger while maintaining the facade of normalcy. Her behavior became bolder, testing me, seeing if I would fold or respond in kind. I caught glimpses of her planning, of subtle manipulations, and I realized how easy it was for intimacy to turn into a battlefield. One night, she suggested a gathering at her apartment, a small dinner with a few close friends. The evening started innocently, laughter filling the air, drinks clinking, the soft glow of candles. But soon my best friend arrived, and the subtle dance resumed. Her attention shifted, a touch here, a glance there, and I felt that familiar tightness in my chest. I knew I couldn't remain passive any longer. As she leaned in to share a joke with him, I responded in kind. A calculated flirtation aimed not just at testing boundaries, but reclaiming some sense of power. The room felt smaller, the air heavier, as if everyone could sense the unspoken war between us. By the end of the night, things had escalated beyond playful teasing. Words had been exchanged, subtle, loaded with meaning, each one a small explosion of tension. I left her apartment feeling a mixture of triumph and dread, the thrill of the game mingled with a deep sense of foreboding. What had started as a playful retaliation had transformed into an emotional storm, pulling us both toward a precipice we couldn't ignore. The following days were a whirlwind of reflection, confrontation, and avoidance. I thought about the boundaries I had crossed, the ethical lines I had blurred, and the unpredictable consequences of my actions. She, too, seemed aware of the shift, her behavior oscillating between affection, manipulation, and subtle provocation. Each interaction became a delicate negotiation, a test of limits, and I realized that the love I thought was straightforward had become a complex battlefield of emotions. I also began to question myself. Had I acted out of love, revenge, or curiosity? Was the thrill of the flirtation worth the risk to our relationship? Each answer I found only led to more questions, the uncertainty gnawing at me. The world I had thought I knew, the relationship I had trusted, was dissolving into something unrecognizable. The game continued, each day a test of emotional endurance. Texts were sent and received, each one loaded with subtext. Casual touches became statements of power, and every glance a calculated move. I found myself analyzing her every gesture, replaying conversations in my head, dissecting every nuance. The playful dance had evolved into a psychological battlefield, with no clear rules and no guaranteed winner. It was in this period of tension that I realized the stakes were higher than I had anticipated. Love, trust, desire, they were all intertwined but fragile. One wrong move, one poorly timed joke could shatter everything. And yet, the thrill, the danger, the raw intensity of emotion kept me engaged, unable to step away, even as the consequences loomed closer. By the end of the second chapter, I was trapped in a complex web of my own making. The flirtation, the retaliation, the subtle manipulations had all become a game of power and emotion, with everyone involved unknowingly playing their part. The boundaries of love had shifted, trust was fraying, and I could feel that the culmination of this tension was drawing near. The night that would change everything arrived with the weight of inevitability. We had planned a small gathering, just the two of us this time, a so-called attempt at reconciliation after days of subtle war. I could feel the tension even before I stepped through the door, the air thick with unsaid words and half-hidden emotions. She greeted me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, the kind of smile that carries secrets, and for the first time, I realized how fragile the line between love and destruction had become. Dinner was quiet at first, almost painfully so. We exchanged polite conversation, talked about work, mutual friends, the weather, but every word was measured, every gesture intentional. I could feel her observing me, reading me, testing whether I would crack or remain composed, and one, in turn, watched her, analyzing each blink, each laugh, each hesitation, calculating my next move. The playful games of flirtation had now transformed into something far more dangerous, a psychological duel where every smile and every word was a weapon. Halfway through the meal, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, a faint flicker of surprise crossing her face. I knew immediately who it was, her best friend. My heart sank, knowing that whatever message had arrived, it was part of the same web we had been weaving for days. She chuckled softly as she read it, her expression shifting subtly from amusement to intrigue, and I felt the familiar knot of jealousy tighten in my chest. I decided I couldn't wait any longer. If the game was to end, it would have to end tonight. I reached across the table, placing my hand over hers, trying to communicate both affection and resolve. Her fingers lingered under mine, warm and soft. Yet there was hesitation in her touch, a subtle acknowledgement that the balance of power had shifted. Then it happened. She leaned in, close enough that I could feel the warmth of her breath, and whispered, "I didn't think you'd actually play along." My stomach lurched. She knew, she had seen the message. understood the intention, and was testing my reaction. I held her gaze, keeping my expression neutral, the storm of emotions raging silently beneath the surface. What followed was a tense exchange of words, subtle yet loaded with meaning. We spoke in half-truths, jokes that carried double meanings, and comments that could be interpreted in multiple ways. Each sentence was a move on the chessboard, a test of boundaries, a probe to see how much the other was willing to risk. It was intoxicating, dangerous, and utterly consuming. Then came the turning point. She stood abruptly, pretending to stretch. And as she did, I noticed the way her eyes flicked to my phone lying on the table. My pulse quickened. I had left it unlocked, a small oversight, and in that split second, I realized how much control she still had over the situation. She didn't take it, didn't touch it, but the look she gave me spoke volumes. You think you're in control, but you're not. I rose as well, moving closer, closing the distance between us, and spoke in a low voice, carefully measured. We need to stop this. Whatever this has become, it's not just a game anymore. Her eyes softened for a moment, and I felt a flicker of the woman I had fallen in love with, the one who made me believe in us. But it was fleeting. The thrill of the flirtation, the danger of the boundary pushing, was too powerful for either of us to resist entirely, and then, in an instant, everything unraveled. A message notification on her phone lit up again, and this time she laughed, a full, uninhibited laugh that cut through the fragile tension. She read it aloud, thinking I wouldn't notice, and it was the final blow. Playful, innocent on the surface, but unmistakably directed at me in response to my little games. I realized then that the delicate balance we had maintained was gone. The flirtation, the retaliation, the psychological duel had reached its climax, and the cost was our relationship. I stepped back, the reality hitting me like a cold wave. All the trust, all the love, all the shared moments, we had shattered them ourselves, piece by piece, with our own hands. The evening that began with hope, with the desire to reconnect, ended in quiet devastation. Words failed us, gestures failed us, and the intimacy that had once defined us had turned into a battlefield too dangerous to navigate. She looked at me, eyes wide, as if finally understanding the gravity of what we had done. I said nothing, because there was nothing left to say. The damage had been done. The playful games, the subtle flirtations, the messages and glances, they had all culminated in this. A moment of undeniable finality. I left the apartment without another word, walking into the night with a hollow feeling in my chest. Each step echoed the collapse of what I thought we had. The cool night air did little to soothe the turmoil inside me. I realized that love, when tested by temptation, jealousy, and manipulation, could unravel faster than I had ever imagined. By the time I reached my car, the full weight of the night pressed down on me. I knew, with absolute certainty, that nothing between us could return to the way it had been. The flirtations, the games, the carefully measured moves, they had all served to illuminate a painful truth. Sometimes, the people we love the most are the ones capable of breaking us the deepest. Driving away, I reflected on the irony. In attempting to assert control, to play along with her dangerous games, I had only accelerated the collapse. Love had been my battlefield, trust my weapon, and now both lay in ruins. The lessons were harsh and irreversible. Passion unchecked can become a weapon. Curiosity can lead to destruction, and sometimes the most devastating betrayals come not from strangers, but from those we hold closest to our hearts. The night had ended, but its echoes would linger forever. The memories of that dinner, of the playful flirting, of the subtle games, would replay endlessly in my mind. And though the relationship was over, the lessons remained painful, unforgettable, and profoundly human.